order the Planning Commission work session. Do I need to wait for the recording alert? Okay. All right, so we're going to call to order the Planning Commission work session for October 12th, 2021. Roll call. Chair Simpson is here. Vice Chair Kai?
Here.
Commissioner Idola?
Present.
Commissioner Giles?
Here.
Commissioner Vance is out of town this week, and Commissioner Brown has not joined us yet. All right, so Joy.
Hi, everyone.
You are not the last person. Either that or the meeting ends when you quit talking. So.
Oh, just a work session. So here you go. Let me get my slides up for you. And I have about 24 of them, but I think we can get through them fairly quickly. There you go. Okay. Well, good evening, Chair Simpson and Commissioners. Joy Chang, planner with the Planning Department. There you go. Tonight, the purpose for tonight's work session is to further discuss the following items, key items that were City Council recommended. Also, there are a couple of items that I need Planning Commission direction. I think these are probably the last ones tied to residential design, and an update in regards to vesting and goalposts, applicability to subdivisions. So I wanted to brief you just to let you know that City Council also recommended that the Planning Commission's original design element suggested that there be no edits or changes to the required number of elements. I provided this example to them in addition to the one that was just, pick a list of 5 additional elements, and they did agree that Planning Commission's original design element, as far as the way it's laid out in this particular slide, is how it should proceed on. So we will take that and move forward with that recommendation.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Is that document part of what is being going through the hearing process, or is it a administrative item that will not be part of the hearing? It
is. The document itself is not part of the hearing. Okay. However, the standards, the way that they are laid out, is part of the code amendments, and it is exactly in this manner where they would have to choose, all the standards A, B, and C in regards to porch, roof, and windows, and then additional 2 elements from the A, B, and C elements, and then additional 3, and then additional 2 from all the lists. So it's right. Just so, but the checklist itself is not part of the packet where they would be approving it, because it is an administrative checklist just to make sure that when the building permit application is submitted, it's clear and objective, and we can just check it off.
Okay. And is this, the last question on this, if a design element is found to be missing, like there's an attribute that council or commission determines should have been included in this list, do we have to go through the full hearings process, or can design elements be added?
It will. We would have to make amendments to the code. So there would be some type of hearing so that we can make those amendments.
Okay,
but enough. We'll definitely discuss this more towards the end, just because I wanted to brief you in regards to the goalposts and vesting, and that's where we'll be able to capture potential changes in the future and what the next steps would be.
Okay, thank you.
The other aspect that I wanted to give you guys an update on is that City Council, with the Planning Commission recommendation on the 15% standard for windows and door openings, that includes trim and shutters in the calculations. So they concurred with the commission. That also includes first floor roof elevation not be included in the calculations as requested before, and they concurred with that. They also concurred with the Planning Commission's recommendation of the 10% standard for window openings and windows and door openings on the secondary elevation that are adjacent to a public right-of-way or public access way. That to trim and shutters could also be included as part of that calculation in regards to secondary elevations. In regards to the proposed design checklist standard, it was definitely identified to me that this particular house on this slide won't be able to meet the 60% of total width of elevation standard. Because the way that the standard is written, it's the width of all garages on the street facing elevation shall not exceed 60 feet. So in this particular case, the garage zone on the side is a total width elevation of 40 feet, and the total width of the garage face is 30 feet, making a total percentage of the garage width of showing 75 feet, or 75% of the total building elevation. And so typical lots, I just want to identify this, that typical lots with widths of 50 feet that are proposing 3-car garages will never meet the standard as written. And that may be okay with the commission. And so the question I have for you tonight is alternatives for the commission to consider is keep the standard as written, or consider the total width of the lot instead of the width of the front-facing elevation, or unless you have additional direction that you would recommend. In this example, 30 feet of garage width on a 50-foot lot is 60%, so that garage element would be satisfied. This is an opportunity for discussion in regards to this particular design standard tied to the garage.
Commissioner Kai?
Joy, is there, so I know the 50-foot lot width is not typical, right? Like that's generally a smaller size compared to the average lot in Sherwood. Is that correct?
50 foot is normal, I think.
Yeah, 50 feet
Okay.
is typical.
Okay.
Because if you have 50 by 100 feet, that's the 5,000 square foot lot target.
Oh, okay. I'm just trying to think of what, I mean, typically a three-car garage is like, normally that's going to consist of a 2-car garage. I think a 3-car garage on a 50-foot lot width is generally going to be on a smaller house. So I don't know how common a 3-car garage would be on a 5,000 square foot lot.
I would think that most of the 3-car garages, certainly in Woodhaven where I live, are on lots that are wider than 50 feet. Certainly, because they don't, I mean, they have a much wider frontage of house in addition to the 3-car garage.
Yeah.
They have to be wider than 50 feet. I imagine they're more like 60 to 75 on average.
Well, and for example, because our home has a 3-car garage, but we're on I believe a 1/4-acre lot, which is a little over 10,000 square feet, and we're also a corner lot, so it might be a little bit different. But you know, in general, I think it's going to be rare to try to find someone who's trying to do 3-car garage on a 5,000 square foot lot.
I agree, and I think my first comment was we have so many moving parts, and keeping the standard as written doesn't mean we're trying to squeeze something in that's awkward at the last minute.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not comfortable with trying to revisit the entire garage width standard using the lot width, because then you've got odd shaped lots and you have a whole different calculation that I think could add complexity to trying to figure out if we are meeting the intent of the code.
And I think aesthetically, you know, it's to have that much garage percentage to home, I think just is aesthetically in general just not going to be as desirable. So I would agree with you, Gene, on keeping the standard as is.
And again, this is one of those opportunities that when we revisit this next year, when we do the middle housing, if there were so many people clamoring with 3-car garages and we missed it, then we can revisit it in the hearings opportunity in June of next year. Commissioner Widola?
Yeah, questions on the applicability and where the 50-foot is measured from, because I'm thinking cul-de-sacs, houses that are on cul-de-sacs, so they're going to have a narrow front regardless, but really where the face of the house will be set back. Are we measuring from the setback, or are we measuring from just the property line on the 50 feet?
If we go to the lot width?
Right.
As this code is currently envisioned, it would have nothing to do with the lot width. It would have to do with the face of the house. So if the lot is a trapezoid and it angles back, widens as it goes back, then if the front of the house is 50 feet, you could in theory fit a 3-car garage on there, because you'd have 30 feet of garage and 20 feet of house.
Thanks for clarifying.
Commissioner Giles?
I was just going to say, I am inclined to agree with Commissioner Kai that even in the picture that's shown here, that's a lot of garage. And so I would rather err on the side of less, and and as you said, let's revisit it if there's objection. But just from a look of it, I think that the trend is to try to not have quite so much garage up front. So I would be proposed of leaving the standard as written as well.
All right, any other comments? It seems like we have a general consensus to keep the standard as written. I see head nodding also.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, everyone. Let's move on to the next question that I posed for you tonight. Roof elements. Currently, the only roof element that is identified in the standard is tile shingled roofs. So the question I have for you is, would you consider others like wood, cedar shake or shingle, or metal roofing as reflected on this slide?
Joy, so if we don't consider the other wood or metal, does that mean that wood and metal are just prohibited?
No, they wouldn't be prohibited. They can provide them, but they don't get credit for them in regards to a design element. Right now, a typical roof element is asphalt shingles. So the design elements that we have is tile. If as written is just tile, if the developer decides to put wood, as in like cedar, or do metal roofing, they just don't get to count them because they're not a design element that we're giving credit to.
So I would be inclined to include metal. I personally wouldn't think that wood would necessarily be a way that we'd want to go in our neighborhood. Most of the houses started as the Cedar Shake, and over time, the look of them, they're expensive to maintain, and the look of them, if they're not maintained, looks pretty poor. and beyond that, there's various pest or insect issues. The what do you call them? They kind of look like little centipedes.
Termites?
No, it's like water or water something. But they nest in the Cedar Shake and can get to be an issue or problematic. So I don't have a problem with metal, but I don't know that we would want to include wood necessarily.
Is that something we want to regulate, though? I mean, that seems like a market thing to me, right? Like I would say let's give them credit if that's what they want to build, because it is an upscale look, and the market will decide ultimately if people want that and decide they want to build it or maintain it or not.
Commissioner Giles has his hand raised.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm also in favor of giving credit for the, things like the Tesla solar roof or something where it is, and again, we're in Oregon. I don't know how much sun we're getting, but those are coming down in price. Their look is nice. I like the incentivizing to build more, power grid, self-reliance kind of stuff and things like that. So, I'm in favor of giving credit. I'll accept that maybe wood is not, maybe an upgrade, but for any of these things that seem like an upgrade, like that tile roof seems like an upgrade. Frankly, even that metal roof seems like an upgrade, but I've seen metal roofs that are not an upgrade, right? If it's, galvanized steel, is that an upgrade? Maybe not. So how do we make a fair and objective call on if it looks upgraded?
I'm not sure if we've got, so would it be a design element if we were to say that they've chosen a roof material that is not asphalt shingle and allow the market to drive whether or not that design element is
I kind of like that wording because again, I don't want to be totally prescriptive, like saying you have to use this material, but it adds interest and look just like upgraded garage doors do, right? So I don't know why we would prohibit that, but I guess we could go down a rabbit hole on that.
Commissioner Kai?
Joy, do we know if wood presents more of a hazard regarding either wildfires or just fires in general for homes and communities?
I have no idea in regards to that. There is definitely what I've been reading that there is an expense to them in regards to installation and maintenance, and that they're poor in fire rating.
So to me, that and that's what I would imagine. I mean, personally, I think like the market is, generally you're not seeing the Cedar Shake because there's better alternatives regarding, either comp shingle, tile shingle, or metal. Me personally, I don't mind including, the other types of things, but I think in terms of wood, given the rise of fire hazards and things like that, it may be something that we actually may want to discourage by not including it with the others.
Okay. Commissioner Widola, you had your hand raised and then it went away. Did you have a comment?
Well, I think it was answered. I think the idea of roofing elements or enhancements helping builders and developers meet the needs is a good idea, but there's we're fraught, like wood was really cool back in the 80s and so forth, and the maintenance of a wood roof may not be something that fits well, but it was answered. I'm good.
Okay, so we can Joy, do you want to take our comments about allowing an architectural design element for roofs to be material, not composite shingle or the whatever asphalt shingle, and then or wood, and then we can come back to discussion on that in hearing to see if there's any further input when we just have draft language in front of us. But I think an enhanced roof element is an architectural feature regardless of whether it's metal. I don't know if a tile shingle roof is the same as those terracotta roofs. I don't, there's obviously materials that we probably haven't even thought of that would be.
Right. And the only concern that I have is that these have to be clear and objective standards.
Well,
And
if the material is asphalt shingle, it is not a design element that is,
Okay, so it would be any other roof element outside of asphalt shingles.
Right, and then the question becomes whether we say asphalt shingles or wood shakes, and that's a discussion the commission and council will have to have when it's in draft form in front of us. Because I could argue either point. I think they look great when they first go on, but with all the wildfires going through, it seems like that is a material that a homeowner wouldn't want anyway.
Okay. Great.
Are we in general consensus with that?
I would agree.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
I do like Commissioner Giles' suggestion regarding the solar roof tiles as well. But if it's worded, as you said, Gene, where it excludes comp shingle and wood, then that should be good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the only open question is, sorry, if you word it that way, is there things that are potentially a downgrade from comp shingle and wood that would get credit if we worded it that way? I don't know if that exists, but I'm just playing devil's advocate, I guess, a little bit, or cautioning against it.
I do know that with certain types of, like there's Eichler Homes that are famous for like their mid-century aesthetic. And those ones have, I think they've gone to like a silicone type of application, which I think is better than like kind of a foam that it started with, which is highly problematic. But I mean, those type of homes aren't in Sherwood, but it doesn't mean that they never would be. But you bring up a good point.
I in quick Googling, the Cedar Shake and the composite asphalt are kind of the bottom. I mean, there's some others that, again, the market will probably decide, like if you're going to use a corrugated steel or something like that. Are you going to sell the house, right? I mean, you can make it look like a chicken coop, but is it going to sell?
Thank you.
All right. I think I got the direction as far as from the commission in regards to there's definitely more conversation tied to this. But we'll draft out some language. So hopefully we can definitely discuss it at the hearing. The next is just summaries in regards to, we didn't bring these forward to you last time, but we had conversation with City Council, very specific to this one here as far as landscaping minimum standards. Before, it was the way that it was written, it required a certain percentage. And again, council requested the planning commission to further discuss, and the commission recommended minimum landscape stand for front yard only instead of the total area. So I wanted to just share with you examples of the front yard area. In this prime example here, available landscape area would be 52%. The one on the right here is 43%.
I'm trying to get oriented. Oh, wait, can you go back? I was trying to get
Yeah.
oriented on which way the lot was facing.
Well, I tried to orient them so that the roadway is always on the bottom there. So the driveway is always on the bottom. That's why they're angled in an odd way because they
Oh.
were, the site plan were all different.
Oh,
north,
I see
south,
what you-
east, west.
Okay.
Okay.
I was like standing on my head.
Yeah,
Okay.
so in this particular example too, I wanted to give you an example of a corner lot, which is 57% of available landscaped area. And this one particular one is 48%. So council, we asked council to consider landscaping. You know, what would you guys consider as landscape materials? And I took this from our landscape standards, section 16.92. And basically they've identified that bark and rock would be okay, but not concrete pavers. Then we also asked council, how should we apply the standard? Should we provide a percentage minimum or a range, 40 to 50% based on the examples I gave? Or don't provide a percentage, but require landscaping in the front yard, excluding X, Y, and Z. And so what staff has basically, or not staff, but council decided that to go with the latter, don't provide a percentage, but require landscape in the front yard. Front yard must be landscape, excluding the paved driveway, paved pedestrian path, and utility areas.
Commissioner Giles?
Oh,
Well, why are we not including concrete pavers? And I'm not saying this as somebody who has a concrete paver patio in their front yard.
they just felt that it wasn't landscaping.
I think the intent was to have green trees and vegetation as a more appealing,
Just
I think
natural element.
a natural element.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think the discussion was also around like, you know, if you just load up with a bunch of pavers, you could do pavers across the entire front yard and park cars in it, right? And so I think that's what we're trying to avoid. Also keep in mind that we're talking about what happens during construction versus what happens over the years as someone owns the house, right? In order to get the building permit, you're going to have to meet the standard, which is you can pave in front of your driveway and a walkway. What someone does 5 years down the road when they, you know, build a paver patio in their front yard, I don't know. I mean, I guess that would be driven by complaint if this code is.
Yeah. Okay, that's a valid point. We tried to grow grass there for 10 years and I finally just gave up. So I said, we're paving it. So, all right. I just was wondering because, you know, it was a very distinct design element where we designed a patio to go there. And so I'm like, oh, that's interesting that they wouldn't include that as landscape, but all right. Thank you.
That does bring up a question though to staff. So my understanding is these designs, the applicability of these design standards is at the time of construction. Does it also perpetuate, you know, into the future where if somebody does come and do something like that down the road and a neighbor complains, are they now out of compliance, or is this only a point in time standard that's applied?
It's a point in time standard that would be looked at the time that they submit a building permit. The only other aspect, you know, we're complaint driven. In any parcels that even before these regulations would take in effect, they would then be considered non-conforming. And so we wouldn't be regulating those and making sure that they come into conformance because of the new standards. But again, we would be implementing these at the time of a building permit of a brand new home.
Yeah, I don't think that quite got at my question though.
Yeah.
So I think my question is, we passed these design standards. A new house gets submitted for development. It passes the design standard. approved, it gets built. 5 years go by, the owner of that house rips up half their front yard and installs pavers. What happens if somebody complains? Do they have to come back in compliance? Is it just like, oh, it was fine when it was built? I mean, that could apply to anything in this code, but I'm particularly using pavers as a really good example because that's something that you could see happening.
I think we need to make that clear. And I guess I would look, it sounds like we're saying it would be applicable at the time of the building permits, but I guess we want to hear what you guys think it should be. Certainly would be way more complicated if it is always applicable and we get complaints, then, that I think that there is a very good likelihood that over time that will change. People will change things, and then we'd have to evaluate whether or not they changed it in a way that brought them out of compliance. But I think it'd be really good to make that clear within the standards. This is applicable for new building permits, or something. And I guess another thing to think about as you guys were talking, I was thinking about modifications too. So, if someone is getting a building permit and has over time come out of compliance, do we then want to require them to come back into compliance? So things that I think to think about and provide input on.
I think
Sorry,
we're getting
sorry to bring this up.
Yeah, no, I think it's great because we only have about 10 minutes. I don't want to run long, and I don't want to make sure we get Joy's questions answered, but I think we need counsel, Josh, to chime in on this, because what Julia just said on that last part was my concern is if someone comes in for a building permit to add an addition onto the back of the house, we already said that the design elements don't apply. I think if someone does a design change that is not on a street frontage, but are they going to have to get in compliance with the other aspects of this code? And then my other question is, this one doesn't seem clear and objective because it says require landscaping in the front yard, excluding a paved driveway, pedestrian path, and a utility area. And I don't know if Joy's delivered a packet to my house, but I have a wide driveway, and it's extra wide because the driveway goes to an RV pad on the side of the house. So does that mean I can't have a paved driveway to the RV pad that is adjacent to my house? Because the apron skirting to the driveway is a normal width, and then it widens out to the driveway and then to the RV pad. So I think a little bit more clarity on the exclusion.
Okay.
And then to not just use concrete pavers as our example for someone going out of compliance. If you buy a house today that has shutters on it, and in 5 years you repaint your house and the shutters come off because you no longer find them appealing, you repaint your house and you don't have shutters, you don't have 15%. What do we do? I think if we can clarify through city council, if this, or not through city council, but through Josh, if this is
I think even before that, I think we maybe could look at, is that something we really want the intent of that? Because I'm putting on my hat here of what I would do.
mm-hmm.
To me, I feel like this should apply at the time of construction only, and
Mm-hmm.
whatever happens after that happens after that. If there's an HOA, the HOA will mandate enough stuff. The rest of whatever happens after that will just happen based on changing norms. And do we really want to police that? I don't know. I don't think I do.
I agree, and I don't want to be a police state where we have to tell people that their houses, that they can't do what they want to in their own house or on their house.
Yeah, I think it sets us up for failure and for, frankly, overload of complaints from a very nosy neighbor who is just trying to irritate.
Yeah, then you got HOAs coming to city council meetings complaining about shutters
Yeah.
and concrete pavers.
Yeah, and I would just, yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. I feel like this should be a point in time only of either construction or major renovation that
So-
triggers, you know, and then
Yeah.
after that, it's whatever.
So
Right.
as somebody, again, who just recently went through concrete pavers, does that also mean bricks? Does it mean, cement pavers? Does it mean clay pavers? Does it mean like crushed gravel? Is it, there's a lot
Impervious.
of, yeah, there's a lot of different things that you can put out there. The crushed granite, I think is what it was called. Anyway, I don't know if that means all of those, because frankly, if I would have put crushed granite out there, I could park cars on that too. So
Yeah. I think what we're saying, I think we need staff to work a little clarity on the RV pad issue and on the other material, what is or isn't considered landscaping or not.
yeah,
Of construction. But I think your point, if we're trying to get at a right an aesthetic, and we probably need to have more things defined that are included or not included in what's considered landscaping, what's not considered landscaping. And then, but I think we could have staff work on that offline.
Okay. We're down to 5 minutes before we have to go to our regular meeting. We can adjourn after our meeting and come back to this work session, or if Joy only has another question or two.
Yeah, if anything, it's just summaries. So I think this is the last in regards to my questions. So let me just move forward just to let you know what council requested and what staff ended up meeting. So council ultimately considered planning commissions reducing the adjustments and variances from 5 to 10%. And council ultimately requested that no adjustments or variances to interior side yard setbacks should be allowed. And that it's, of course, not applicable to side yard setbacks on corner lots. And also to apply those same standards to the plan unit development. So the exact language is in the table under 16.12. The interior is note number 6. It basically says adjustments and variance to interior side yard setback for single family detached, etc., are not allowed.
Can it just be for any housing types? Because it's any housing type.
Or for all housing types.
It's for all
Yeah.
housing types, so I don't want to call out any housing type. I want it to be all housing types. And I think there needs to be clarity, because what I heard was no adjustments or variances to any yard setbacks. So if you could get clarity on that, because I thought it was no yard setback variances.
Yeah, and I heard interior side yard.
Okay.
But we'll definitely clarify that and fix the wording to all housing types.
Thank you.
So then with that, in the PUD, we are proposing this language that the setback shall be consistent with the provisions of the underlying zones, with the exceptions listed below. The perimeter boundary of a PUD shall be consistent with the underlying zone, but all the remaining lots not in the perimeter boundary may utilize the provisions of average lot size of the underlying zone. So again, if we're not allowing variances to side yard, interior side yard, or whatever was discussed, and I'll verify that, we have it in this provision, shall be consistent with the provisions of the underlying zones. So that's how we're addressing PUDs. Questions on that?
It doesn't, your item 2 doesn't address may use the provision of average lot size, and then there's no setback adjustments allowed in the PUD.
Well, when we say the setbacks shall be consistent with the provisions under the underlying zone, if we have note 6 under the underlying zone saying that there can't be setbacks or variances to
Okay.
the interior setbacks, that's how we capture it.
Okay.
Then also, I wanted to touch base with you in regards to, we've basically identified all of the minimum width standards that are tied to the different types of garages and made sure the functionality is
Perfect.
clear. So, and then we also, there's different language in the code that talks about visibles or seen from the street facing elevation, primary and secondary elevation. We've cleaned up the language to basically said adjacent to a public right of way or a public access way, since we've discussed this. There was also a question on how is this applied to a corner lot, or in this particular case, a cul-de-sac. So here's 2 prime examples of cul-de-sac. So there is frontage here and a frontage there. In this particular case, this would be considered a corner lot. So depending on where the entrance is, that would typically be the primary elevation. And the second elevation would be the second street. Or secondary elevation would be the opposite street that it's also fronting. Just so that you know that that was clarified in the standards. In regards to council's requests using the word family related to housing type, and then also the council called up review option. We did fix it so that we can use the word family, where we define family as any number of individuals living regardless of familial or non-familial relationship. So again, we can still utilize single family, multifamily as part of description, because we changed the definition of family. And then council also asked for an opportunity for review. So we've updated this particular section that allows them for review if necessary. The other options or questions that they were asking will not be part of this.
Joy, can I interrupt?
Yes. Yes.
Erica, is it possible to get someone over into the other meeting so the citizens that are waiting to hear their citizen comments know that they are at the right place?
Oh,
Because we have citizens that are trying to do comments and we're late already. So
right.
Let me ask Mark if it's but I don't think we can, because I think we have to close this meeting.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so we either need to end this meeting and go to the other one, or continue it till after our planning commission meeting.
I literally have 2 slides left. So I'm just letting you know, roadway width to allow for off-street parking and on-site swales need further discussion and won't be part of this code amendment package. And
But will they? And this is why we should just continue. We should have continued it. Is that needs to be part of our June hearings when we go to middle housing. The roadway width needs to be.
And that's what we plan. We're planning on that.
Okay.
they're not part of the residential design standards that we're currently looking at, but we'll reevaluate them definitely on the next round of work.
It has to be at the hearing for the June 2020 hearing.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So just to give you guys an update, it has been identified that this particular ORS basically identifies that Any land use that were submitted prior to the implementation of these standards that we're proposing are grandfathered in, meaning all of the new subdivisions that we have in Middlebrook subdivision, Riverside Homes, Weekly Homes, all along Brookman, they would not be subject to the new residential standards that we are proposing, because under this provision, they have vesting rights under it. So in regards to how do we implement this, we can definitely implement them on infill lots, and we'll continue reviewing those when this applications do come in. But staff is also proposing to review the new building permits that are coming in, even though they're not subject to it, to see if we can evaluate the design standards against them, and that will help us determine to see if there needs to be future changes to the standards.
Okay. Can you send this PowerPoint to us? The last meeting, we asked for the PowerPoint to be emailed and it wasn't, or at least I don't recall getting it. So can you send this to us?
Yeah, it was sent earlier this or today. So so let me know if you didn't receive it, but it should have been included. And then I think that's pretty much it. The next hearing is to Planning Commission in 2 weeks, and November 9th if needed, and City Council November 16th and December 7th, tentative, depending on if we need that second hearing. That is all that I have, and I can answer any questions you may have at this time.
We are already late. Go ahead, Councilor Scott.
So I just had a quick clarification question on the vesting part. So if the date of applicability depends upon like when the PUD was approved, or
when the application was submitted.
Okay, so any future PUDs would that are applied for after this goes into effect would be good, or any other land or any other application.
Subdivision, any land, subdivision that comes in would be subject to it.
And secondly, just a clarification on your last point, if some of the stuff we're evaluating, even though we can't apply the standard, just because it wouldn't have passed doesn't mean the standard's wrong. It could mean that the standard will raise the bar like it's supposed to.
That is correct.
Some of that could fall on both sides, but it's a good.
Yes, yeah. That is correct.
All right, we are closing this one and going